I know you guys can still hear it very much in my voice. Flu week at the Spring Blake Studios is still very much here, kicking me in the loins for what I believe is now the 6th, 7th day in a row. Now, we're much better than we were last week, but man, is this one taking some time to kick the system. But as always, we march. Welcome into the Spring Blake College Football Show. Today is Monday, November 17th, on the cusp of another electric Week 12 of college football action. 2 weeks away from the regular season wrapping up and us heading toward conference championships and the college football playoffs, and then the coaching carousel and the transfer portal and the NFL draft. Like, this shit ain't slowing down anytime soon. Neither are we. This is, of course, your favorite ball knower's favorite ball knowing show. On today's show, we are obviously going to recap all the biggest outcomes from Week 12. We're going to take a dip back into the coaching carousel, some latest tidbits, news, notes, information, all that good stuff. We will, at the end, look ahead to the College Football Playoff Committee rankings, what we think they are going to put out on Tuesday. And as always, we're going to have a whole lot of fun while doing it. But before we get into all that, of course, we always have to mention, if you are here for the very first time, first of all, thank you for supporting this show, just showing up. Attendance, check, you're here. I appreciate it. If you're here, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video, leave a comment, interact however you may see fit. If you are listening, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, I still love you, even though you're not on the YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, 5-star review, all the support that you guys can give on those. Also, make sure to head to the socials. That's Twitter and TikTok at Spring Blake CFB for just, stuff that we do on this show and anything that we do outside of this show. More recently, I think we've done more videos of EDM festivals on the TikTok than we have college football content, but that's just because we've been sick, and we're sick because we were at a festival. So that's all I had to really put out there. But again, I appreciate the support. I know that the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been as consistent just with travel and the cold, but we're here at the most important parts of the season. Here's what we are. We're going to talk about this for a few different teams on the show today. We're going to be a team here at the Spring Blake Studios that is peaking at the right time. You want to be a team that is peaking at the end of the regular season, in the conference championship weekend, into the college football playoffs. That is what we're going to do here. We're not peaking in October. We're not peaking in fall camp. I haven't even begun to peak, as the great Dennis Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia says. So we're here, we're peaking, and we've got a great show ahead for you guys. So how about this one down in Tuscaloosa? That's where we're going to kick things off today, where Kalen DeBoer loses for the first time at home as head coach of Alabama, losing to the Oklahoma Sooners, who come in and beat up on the Tide. Final score in this one is 23-21. And, it's funny, I say beat up on the Tide. Alabama essentially won every metric on the box score in this game. They threw for nearly 200 more passing yards. They hit on more third down conversions, were the less penalized team, ran 24 more plays on offense, won the time of possession battle by nearly 10 minutes. But 3 Alabama turnovers to 0 from the Sooners made all the difference in this game. And not just the fact that the turnover battle was that decisive, it was how it all happened. Those 3 turnovers led to 17 Oklahoma Sooner points. Ty Simpson's second interception of the season early in that game got returned for a quick touchdown for Oklahoma. Ryan Williams, the terrific talent, fumbles a punt return that led to a quick Oklahoma touchdown. And then a Ty Simpson fumble on a sack led to a field goal in the fourth quarter for Oklahoma. So you're not just getting like, oh, okay, well, we turned it over in the red zone and then Oklahoma had to drive 80 yards to score. It was like, no, we're giving Oklahoma points every single time we cause a turnover. It was such an uncharacteristic day for the Alabama offense. They went into that game with the 4th best turnover margin in the country. And while the story, while that is all about Alabama, the story here really is with Oklahoma. An incredible, massive run for the Sooners here, stealing consecutive road wins in incredibly tough environments. Tennessee, a couple weeks back, they hit their bye week. They do it again here at Alabama to take full control of its playoff chances and 2 home wins away from an at-large bid into the conference or into the college football playoffs. In those two games against Tennessee and Alabama, Oklahoma got 6 takeaways, which contributed to 37 of the team's 56 points, which has really helped this offense out in what have been a few pedestrian outings for the Sooner attack. Mateer is just averaging 150 passing yards in those two games, 0 touchdowns to 1 interception. He does have 2 rushing scores, 0 through the air though. The team is just 30% on third downs in those games, averaging just 4.9 yards per play. The offense has not been, ever since Mateer came back, you're like, okay, when is this thing going to string along? When is he going to get more comfortable? They started out real hot. The ground game started to show a few games here, but in these two games, it wasn't at its best, but it didn't matter because great defense and terrific special teams play has this team rolling. The Sooners found 4 sacks in this game against Alabama, even without our Mason Thomas for the entire game, the best player on Oklahoma's defense. They still find a way to sack Ty Simpson 4 times. They did the same thing to Joey Aguilar a couple weeks before. And then, we're not a kicker show here, but Tate Sendell, congrats on being the first kicker to get a shout out on this show because he has been nails at the kicker position for this team. Laugh at him if you want for the short shorts that he wears. It looks ridiculous. It's almost like as someone who likes to dress in ridiculous outfits at times just for the to get laughs out of people. I do appreciate Tate Sandell's short shorts here. They're crazy, but he's made 21 straight field goals for this team now, which leads the SEC, and he's already 7 for 7 on 50-plus yard attempts. And overall, like I said, Oklahoma's now taking full control of its playoff destiny, its postseason aspirations. You're just really starting to see a team take on the persona of its head coach. Brent Venables deserves so much credit for the mentality, the mindset, the physical nature that he is instilling in this team. They are playing harder football than anybody in the sport right now. The way they hit on a consistent basis. They're a team that is almost, defensively is realizing like, we have an opportunity here if we just, we hit harder, we force turnovers, we make the other team submit, we are going to be able to steal wins here and help out our offense as it starts to get, a little bit closer to what it was at the beginning of the season. Brent Venables, I thought he got some unfair hot seat talk at the beginning of the season. I think it was one of the first things we talked about on this show was like, okay, well, what is Oklahoma going to be under Brent Venables if they disappoint? If the Mateer Arbuckle doesn't hit and they're a bad offensive team again, like, does he have enough rope to keep going? I didn't think it was warranted because, all of the issues with Oklahoma for a lot of the time were about the offense. And he does have some control over what goes into that side of the football, but he has very minimal control over the results that it plays out. And that offense was letting down what I thought were some really talented defenses that he put forward. Now, the offense isn't perfect. It's better, a lot better than what it was last year. Still has its issues, still is inconsistent, but just being average, just being somewhat there is allowing this team's best strengths to show true and carry itself into some really important results. And as I mentioned, now Oklahoma is sitting here in full control of its college football playoff hopes. This was the argument I made all season long with Oklahoma when I made them a preseason pick to make the college football playoffs. I thought they were going to get one of these at-large bids at the beginning of the year. They were always talented enough of a team to get to 9 or 10 wins. And when you do that, given the quality opponents on their schedule, there weren't going to be many teams that were able to stack up competitive resumes. And that's where they're sitting now. They've moved up to 8 in the AP poll. I assume they'll be somewhere in that same ballpark in the latest college football playoff ranking, somewhere 7, 8, 9, 10, definitely up from 10. But then you've got Missouri and LSU at home, both teams that might be playing backup quarterbacks. If Garrett Nussmeier stays out, Matt Zollers, obviously the true freshman, is now in for Missouri. And you're also getting benefit of the doubt for some certain results early in the year. You're getting benefit of the doubt for that Texas loss because your quarterback was rushing back from a hand surgery. So you're getting the benefit of the doubt for that loss. You've made it to now where you control your destiny, could be a 2-loss team, and you're playing your best football at the right time. And it's funny because, offensively, they're playing their best football because of Mateer early on. Now they almost feel better just because they have a little bit more balance. Now, they didn't run the football well against Alabama. That's still something that you need to see on a consistent basis, and something I was a little bit worried about heading into this game. But you're getting a full-hearted effort, all three phases here, and it's awesome to see. You're playing your football at the right time, and they deserve all the credit that they are getting over the last few weeks. Now, you can't fall asleep. You definitely can't fall asleep. Don't think that the race is finished just yet. Do not just march into home and be like, Missouri, they're on a red shirt or a true freshman that doesn't have a semblance of a passing attack. We'll handle them just fine. Or LSU's not playing for much. They might be on their backup quarterback too. Like, no, you got to stay fully focused in here these last few weeks. But this is one of the more deserving teams in the country to be placed inside the college football playoffs, and this is a statement victory and season for head coach Brent Venables. And just to say it a second time, very happy that he's been able to turn Oklahoma into this, because you just felt like if they could get it just borderline average, like you don't have to go from really bad to awesome. You can go from really bad to, hey, better, and then better, and then better, and then better. And then all of a sudden you're sitting here as a potentially 2-loss team and one of the scarier teams that you might have to face in the college football playoffs. So hats off to Oklahoma for the massive win. And hey, to flip things over to the Alabama side, your biggest fears rang true when everything that had been masking it up to this point had its own bad outings. Not having a ground game at Alabama is fine when you're lighting it up through the air, not turning the football over. But then you come into a game where your stud quarterback plays probably his worst game of the year, at least the worst game since week 1 against FSU. He contributes to 2 turnovers. Your star wide receiver fumbles on a punt return. You give up 4 sacks. All of a sudden, running the football for 80 yards doesn't really do you all too much. And the Bama defense, look, they lost the game by 2 points. The Bama defense deserves a ton of credit. They did as much as you could ask them to. Oklahoma had 4 drives that started inside Alabama territory. 3 of those drives started within the 35. So Oklahoma was getting, just being handed opportunities to put up points. Outside of those 4 drives that started in Oklahoma territory or in Alabama territory, here are how those drives ended. Punt, 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 field goal, punt, punt, punt. They did as much as they could. They held Oklahoma to 2.6 yards per carry, 138 yards through the air, 3 of 13 on third down. This truly came down to the mistakes on offense. And even then, it was incredibly tight. So yeah, it's hard to say that I leave this being like, Alabama's not who I thought they were. My preseason pick, they're a really bad football team. Now, they lost a game in which the turnover margin was 3-0, and they lost by 2 points. They were there right at the very end. Now, what I will say, if we want to talk about concerns with Alabama, we spoke about how Oklahoma is playing its best ball right now, as it's gearing toward the most important parts of the season. The Alabama offense is doing the exact opposite of that. Now, the ground game has always been bad. That's not what's shocking here. The issue is that the passing game is starting to take a little bit of a hit. Between weeks 2 and weeks 8, Ty Simpson was completing 75% of his passes. Over the last 3, that number has dropped down to 60.8%. The warning signs had been there with this Alabama passing game, first in the South Carolina bout where they, pull out an ugly come-from-behind victory. LSU, I know they win, they cover. The passing game itself wasn't all that impressive. They kept missing on the deep shots. So you're starting to see the semblance of like, is this actually happening? And then a better team with a little bit more to play for comes into town, and they kind of just squeeze their grip around those warning signs and say, oh, we think you're flawed here. Let's really push the buttons in on that. And because of that, Alabama loses its second game of the season. Now, I got to admit, I have downplayed their inability to run the football up to this point of the season. I thought Ryan Grubb was doing a great job on screens, RPOs, all the deception to facilitate those short yardage plays. It's something we've talked about 5 or 6 times on this show. And maybe there aren't that many defenses like Oklahoma's that stand in Alabama's way between now and the end of the regular season. But it's hard to not feel just like a little bit worse about this team, right? Especially if their offense that's already one-dimensional is now not going to be like a hitting at a 95% clip, or let me just say 75% clip because that's the completion rate. If Ty Simpson is hitting on 75% of his passes, I don't care that you're one-dimensional. But if he's completing 60% and he's getting hit and he's turning the ball over, I don't know. It's hard to not feel worse about this team, because there are a few teams right now in college football, a good amount, that are playing, they're really rounding into form as the season goes on. They can win the shootouts, they can win the ugly games, and Alabama's shown us an ability to do that at different points this season. But it just feels, as we get closer to having to play a gauntlet of really talented teams, having the league's 123rd ground game just feels like it's going to rear its ugly head at some point on this team's pursuit to a national championship. So I'm not backing off them. I picked them to win it all. I think they've got a really good defense, really talented wide receivers. Ty Simpson, maybe he can start figuring it out in these last few weeks. I'm not going to back off them because my preseason picks are still alive, so I'm not going to just say like, nope, I'm jumping ship. I think I've done that a few times, and then I end up paying the price for it. I jumped ship on Oklahoma. I jumped ship on them after the Ole Miss loss. I was like, yeah, that's a bummer. It's over. And here they are, an at-large team in the playoffs. So I'm not jumping off Alabama, but I am a little bit concerned that they might face a team that just is playing better football at this point in the year. One more thing that I do want to say about the Tide before we get off this game and move to the other results from the week. Let's not forget the biggest complaint about Kalen DeBoer's Crimson Tide since he took over as the head coach at the beginning of the 2024 season. People think that this is a soft football team. And I don't care if, you put up 70 on Wisconsin or you beat Georgia in Athens. Some of these results, it's hard to argue. Last year, you get bullied by Vandy and Oklahoma. All right, well, let's flush out some of the guys. Let's get some new coaches in. Let's get our guys in here at Alabama. Maybe we'll be more physical and more mentally tough and ready to take a beating. Okay, well, then week 1, you go and get bullied by Florida State. Probably still one of the more shocking results we've seen all season, because Florida State has now gone on to be a nothing burger. And then you just watched them this past weekend get punched in the mouth by Oklahoma for the second straight time. 2 years in a row now, Oklahoma took it to Alabama, and they just were the more physical team, and they made Alabama submit. This 2025 team is more talented than last year's. They've got better coaching. I do think it's a more tough program. But is that characteristic a fundamental flaw with Kalen DeBoer's teams? They responded well after that Florida State loss. Better than, honestly, any team has responded to an outcome so far this season. Can they do that again? Can they take this and say, hey, we got punched in the mouth by a really physical defense. We got punched in the mouth by Florida State. We responded really well. How can we get off the mat again? Because I'll just say, we have to wait a few weeks to find out. We're going to find out. I know that the Auburn Tigers are just licking their chops right now, knowing that the Iron Bowl, 2 weeks from now, a game that is Auburn's Super Bowl this season. Auburn, a team with a very physical, aggressive, talented defense, good offensive line. They're going to test them. They're going to try and punch Alabama just like Oklahoma did, just like Florida State did. They're going to give it their all in that game. Will Alabama respond just like they did again after their loss to FSU? I'm looking forward to see it, because if so, everything is still right in front of them. I think there's still those tiebreakers where they play for an SEC title. They'll be one of the top seeds in the college football playoffs if they win that title game. Let's see the response. Very curious to see how this team responds to this outcome. All right, we're going to take a move along, but because I'm sicker than a dog, I am dying for some water. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Balake. Where is Balake at?
All right, so let's stay in the SEC, because why wouldn't we? It's the conference that always delivers on action, to break down Georgia seizing the moment, using it to separate from Texas in the second half of that football game. Final score 35-10. Now, the final score felt very much like it when the game wrapped up, but it was not like that for the majority of the game, and especially not when Texas started to gain some momentum early in the third quarter. Arch Manning finds Ryan Wingo for a touchdown, made it a 14-10 ball game. You're starting to be like, hey, up to that point, Texas's defense, their front seven, doing a pretty solid job stopping Georgia's ground game. They had gotten a few mistakes out of Gunnar Stockton there. Colin Simmons with a nice interception on him. You started to feel like things were going to Texas's favor. Kirby Smart seemed to notice that as well. Feeling like the game was slipping away from his team, Kirby Smart dropped his nuts on the table. 2 fourth down attempts, both which were completed, led Georgia down to an early fourth quarter score, regaining an 11-point lead. But in case you didn't hear his nuts hit the table hard enough the first time, he took him and just fucking whacked him right down again. Onside kick recovered by the Bulldogs. Of course, Texas was not preparing for it at all. Surprise onside kick. Georgia takes that drive for another touchdown that essentially puts the game on ice. Unbelievable. You're just watching the game and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, Texas is in this thing. Everything that they want for their season, they're still in control right now. They have the momentum. Kirby Smart's like, no thank you, not today. We've always talked about how to beat Georgia, you need to snatch their soul. You need to go in and rip the life out of them. And the fact that it was Kirby Smart being the aggressor in this game and snatching the soul out of Texas tells you all you need to know about the makeup of these two football programs. We've got to watch these teams play 3 times in the last calendar year, just about. Has there ever been a point where Texas looked like the aggressor or the ones taking it to the Bulldogs? Texas played so patient and uninspiring. It felt as though they were just kind of crossing their fingers, hoping to get lucky, leave Georgia with an upset win if the ball just happened to bounce their way. But not Kirby Smart. He does not leave things up to chance here. Making calls and decisions like the ones he did, the 4th down attempts, the onside kick, it just does so much more than giving your team a tactical advantage. It puts so much confidence and swagger into your players' heads. It shows them that you trust them enough to take advantage of those opportunities when they hit, but also that you trust them enough to make up for them if they didn't go their way. Georgia was still going to be in that ball game if they didn't get those 4th downs or recover the onside kick. But they had enough swagger to know, like, if we hit these, it's a wrap. It's game over. And that was the case there. It's why Kirby's one of the best to do it. It's helping this young team right now learn how to win, learn how to dominate, and just play their best ball as they move through the rest of the season. And that's what you're getting out of Georgia. I said it's going to be the theme of the show. Who is playing their best ball right now? Georgia averaged 5.6 yards per play on a defense that was allowing 4.5 heading into the week. Mike Bobo, for as much hate as he gets at times, he was doing a terrific job calling plays, pushing the right buttons for this offense. And Gunnar Stockton, we've been saying it with each passing week now, he has such a strong command over this offense. 5 total touchdowns in the game against Texas to just 5 incomplete passes. Stockton is now thrown for 200 or more yards in his last 5 games, has 16 total touchdowns to just 3 interceptions in that span. So you're getting all that from the quarterback. A guy that, it's so impressive to see the way that he is molded into the quarterback that he is right now. So you're getting all the play out of him. And then you're always guaranteed one of Nate Frazier, Chauncey Bones is going to give you 70 plus on the ground. The offensive line is so interesting to me for Georgia because it's almost like they feed into the momentum, into the energy of those 4th down conversions or recovering the onside kick. The offensive line, as soon as those moments happened, it was like, oh, Texas's front 7 is nullified. Now, maybe that's because the Texas front 7 felt depleted because they knew they were trying to do all they could to keep it in reach. But as soon as Georgia started hitting on those plays, it felt like the offensive line gained 20 pounds each, and they just started plowing through. So you're getting all that from the offense. And then, I'd even say the front seven played its best game of the season. 3 sacks on Arch Manning, ton of pressures, stuffed the run for the 3rd straight game against Texas. We'll talk about in a little bit. It's just awesome to watch. You can obviously see how much Kirby Smart enjoys coaching this team. It's a happiness that you see from him on the sideline that I just don't think I remember seeing. Maybe I haven't paid enough attention when he's coaching, but he just seems to have like this, little kid joy about him with this team. And it's hard to not look at Georgia right now and see what this team is turning into and not place them toward the top of your national title contender list. You always have to find a new way to spin these games when you talk about Georgia, because you're just like, well, it's Georgia. They just do it. But to me, it was such an impressive way to just say, and that's the thing too, is that Steve Sarkisian before the game was like, we know Kirby's going to have something. And just the fact that he's still able to push those buttons when it matters most and to still somehow catch Texas off guard, it's an incredible feat. So hats off to the Bulldogs. They are also another team still in that mix, depending on the tiebreakers for an SEC title game. And few teams are playing better football right now than them. It was a really impressive outcome. Now, on the flip side, to flip things over, I got to say this about Texas. This might be the most disappointing result I've seen from Texas under Steve Sarkisian. And I know that he's been around for a while. They've had a few signature wins along the way, a few disappointing results, but I think this is the most disappointing result. How about this? 3 games against Georgia in the last calendar year. 83 total rushing yards. They just had 23 in this one. If you cannot run the football, and you also do not have dynamic playmakers on the outside to compensate for that, and you also have a young quarterback that, is just erratic at times, then you're not going to have a contending football team. And that's where this team is. They've been trying to tell us all season. Texas has been telling us since week 1, since, their non-conference in the first few weeks, they are not a contender. And now we're sitting here, playoff hopes are all but vanished, and it's like, oh, yeah, I guess we knew that. I could have made the argument, honestly. Say that game's at 14-10. Say it finishes 21-17, or it stays at 14-10. And then they go in and beat Texas A&M. Like, I've been sitting here saying, like, if they split these and lose close to the other, they could have a case for the at-large, especially with the victory over Oklahoma. But, I mean, losing this dramatically, barely getting by your lesser opponents, it's just a really dark mark to move off of. And I don't know if there's anybody sitting here being like they still have a chance. They don't have a chance. This team is dead. The season's over. But I want to go beyond just 2025 when we discuss this outcome for Texas. Because I have an overarching question. And that question is, what is this Texas football program under Steve Sarkisian? Last year, really strong campaign. They make it far in the postseason. We're one of the best teams in the country. But even in that best season, when they got punched in the mouth by a physical football team, they folded. Twice to Texas, twice to Georgia, they lose in the playoffs to Ohio State. And then in the offseason, Sark said that everything has been building up to 2025. And it's like, okay, well, this is the first year where it's all my guys. The old regime, is fully out. We're putting all the chips in for this 2025 season. And what you got out of that was a 25-point loss to Georgia, an 8-point loss to a dead Florida program, a 3-point win over Vandy, overtime wins over Mississippi State and Kentucky, and a 7-point loss to Ohio State, a team that would probably double up on you if they were to play this time around. If that game was to happen right now, Ohio State is not just beating Texas by 7 points. It's a much more sizable victory than that. So to say that this is the year and to get those results is beyond concerning. I'm not saying you got to burn the thing to the ground. I'm not saying that they won't rebound in 2026. But you got to figure out what you're going to be as a football program. Find your identity. Find the buttons to push when your backs are pressed against the wall. Find out what Texas football under Steve Sarkisian is going to mean. I don't know what it means. Last year, I would have said it's a team that's going to put up 40 points a game and rely on a really talented defense. This year, no ground game. Last year, pretty bad ground game. Like, when it goes up against the best in the country, they fold. I don't know what this team's identity is. I don't know what they're trying to be. And they have a really important offseason because you need to tell us who you're going to be. I know what Georgia's going to be. They're always going to be in the fight. You're going to have to steal games from them. I know that Alabama is going to be a team that tries to just put up 30 points through the air and have a really nice red zone defense. I know what a lot of the best teams in college football are trying to be. I do not know what Texas football wants to be. So you need to tell us who that's going to be as a football program. If you want us to believe that you're going to be a legitimate player for anything serious in this sport. Just a beyond frustrating season for Texas, man. To start the year as the preseason favorite, to have all the hype behind Arch Manning, and it's not just an Arch thing. The offensive line is not what it needs to be. The ground game is not what it needs to be. The playmakers haven't been there. The defense did all it could. They're really well coached on that side of the ball, but when they go up against the best in the sport, they fold. So, I don't know what to do with that, man. How are we doing on time? All right, we're going to take a quick break. Not a quick break. I don't need water yet. We're going to take a break from the games because I want to take a dip back into the coaching carousel. As I've mentioned, I almost, for 6 weeks now, we're heading toward what's going to be the most unprecedented coaching carousel of all time. And there are a few things that I've found very interesting that have popped up over the last few weeks. So I want to give my 2 cents on them. Reports keep coming out that Virginia Tech and James Franklin are in early talks of a deal or nearing a deal. And while this is something that's been in the rumor mill for a while, the fact that we haven't gotten a pen to paper tells me a lot. These reports are 100% being leaked out from the Virginia Tech side of things because they want to put pressure on James Franklin to put the pen to paper. They do not want him to keep waiting for certain jobs, maybe a Florida State, to open up because they understand that Florida State is a better opportunity for James Franklin than Virginia Tech is. And obviously, Franklin, I don't blame him. I don't blame either side for these things. That's what it is. Like, I understand that Virginia Tech doesn't want James Franklin to wait to see if the Florida State job opens up. I understand why James Franklin is like, hey, I'm going to keep waiting to see what jobs open up. The one thing I will say, putting the pressure on Franklin to get something done and to be like, hey, we're nearing something, kind of setting like this firm deadline, I almost wonder if that's going to have the opposite effect that you want it to have. James Franklin's a really good coach. He could do a lot better places than Virginia Tech. No offense to the Hokies. I am a Duke, though, so 21-16, boys. You should be really lucky if James Franklin accepts that gig. And, I understand you want to try and expedite that process to make sure that it happens, but I almost wonder if it's going to have an opposite effect where Franklin's like, hey, chill. Give me some time. I have every right to wait here and see what jobs open up. Your current season isn't even over yet. So that's one thing that's been popping up. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, we've seen a lot of prime coaching candidates ink their contract extensions over the last few weeks. Curt Cignetti was the first a while back, obviously. He signed his fat contract extension to stay with the Hoosiers. Rhett Lashley has agreed to stay on at SMU. Matt Rule is staying at Nebraska. Mike Elko signed a fat one over the weekend to lock in with Texas A&M for an extra 6 years. The Mike Elko one, like, people were like, Penn State, Penn State, Penn State. He's from the area. It's like, Texas A&M is better than Penn State. Why is he leaving? And then, of course, he signs the fat contract extension. I never thought that to be legit. It also seems that Jeff Brom is working on a deal to stay at Louisville. Sorry, I got to keep doing that. If I'm a college football show talking about Louisville, I need to talk about Louisville. Kenny Dillingham tells us every week that he's not leaving Arizona State, and I bring all that up to say, all these coaches, all these prime candidates have stayed where they're staying. Lane Kiffin hasn't signed anything, at least as of November 17th at 1:37 p.m. Central Time. Lane Kiffin hasn't signed an extension with Ole Miss. It's going to be a really interesting situation. Really interesting couple of weeks heading down to Oxford. I think he's off to Florida. I felt that way for a while. I felt like LSU is a really nice job, but they're a little bit messy. Lane, Florida, has always been a really strong connection. I felt for a while he would end up being the Florida head coach. I think he's going to be the Florida head coach. I think the way he's handled the media the last few weeks, the appreciation he is showing, he had the living in the good old days when you're in them quote at the press conference this past weekend as they beat Florida. I think he knows his time here is coming to an end. And the reason that gets really interesting for a guy like Lane Kiffin, a school like Ole Miss, and the season they're currently having is, if Ole Miss has a blank check in front of Lane Kiffin, which they definitely have, they've given him the blank check and say, write the number and put your name next to it. If all he does is continue to stare at it and wait, at some point, Ole Miss does have to think in their own best interest. And if the blank check is there and he's not saying anything, they obviously have to feel like they're the losers here. They're the losing side. So just keep an eye on it. We could be, by the time I publish this show, he could sign his extension. And I'll have to put a little note at the end and be like, haha, that was funny. But the longer this thing goes on without something being signed, it is more and more likely that Lane is off to Florida. And if that's the case, that's the shitty thing with this sport. You can't just let the guy finish things out. Ole Miss, knowing that, is going to have to turn to its next head coach and to their guys and to the future of Ole Miss while still being in the college football playoffs. This isn't like a G5 coach that is just flailing out and waiting, for the season to end. And he knows, John, or maybe I won't use John Summerall, but there's a coach out there that knows he's taking a new gig. And it's like, okay, well, when the regular season ends, sure, we'll be one of the first to put the pen to paper. Ole Miss is in the playoffs. They're still in the mix for a conference title appearance. They could be doing all of that with Joe Judge as their head coach. Because Lane, they kick to the curb and say, if you're going to Florida, have fun. Get out of here. Really interested to see how that all plays out. Because it's the unfortunate nature of the sport. You can't just finish a season and start the new one the next day. These things overlap, the transfer portal, the recruits, it's all a jumbled mess. And so you get shitty situations like that. So those are my 2 cents on the recent updates in the coaching carousel. Now I need to take a break because I need some water. We got one more game and then a few other notes to talk about, some college football playoff stuff, and then we'll get out of here.
My name's Blake.
Good for Lincoln Riley, man. I am so fucking happy for Lincoln Riley. We're going to talk USC's massive win over the Iowa Hawkeyes. The Trojans pull themselves out of a 21-7 deficit, score 20 unanswered to move to 8-2 on the season. 8-2. That 2-loss column, you're still in the hunt for a college football playoff berth. So happy for Lincoln Riley. And you saw it himself. You saw it yourself. If you were watching the game and you saw those closing moments where they realized that they were going to pull out the victory over Iowa, Lincoln Riley was jumping for joy on those sidelines, man. I was so happy for him. And it's so... You understand why this outcome means so much. This was such a character-building win for the USC Trojans. For so long now, they've been talked about this softest Charmin program. They played pretty boy football out west. And, you're going to join the Big Ten. Well, mean man football is going to come and run you out of town. And look, this isn't like Lincoln Riley took his team into Athens or Tuscaloosa and took down some of the greatest teams of all time. But to take this step forward, to outmuscle a team like Iowa in the second half in the way that they did, says so much about the work and development that is being put in this team over the last couple of seasons. I've always, even before this show, when I was just doing social clips and we talked about USC in the 2024 season, it's like, hey man, they've got the plan. The plan is working. It's just taking a little bit of time, as it usually does. You can't go from really bad to awesome. You got to go from really bad to not that bad to, hey, that's better. Hey, we're average. Oh, we're above average. Now we're here. Now we're 8-2, well in control of handling our business and getting into the college football playoffs. It's going to take a tough road to get there, but it's still there. They held the Hawkeyes to 108 yards in the second half of that game. Like I said, they were down 21-10 into the break. Nothing looked good. They came out of the half, held the Hawkeyes, shut them down offensively. Jaden Maiava threw for 158 yards in the closing 2 quarters. Mekhi Lemon, with his best game of the day, the best receiver in college football right now, draft eligible. 10 grabs, 153 yards. You get 2 rushing scores out of Brian Jackson. And against one of the more polished and consistent football teams of the last 2 decades, you were the better team on third down. We're the less penalized team. You punted less. You won the turnover battle. You kept the time of possession battle extremely close. Like, those are all the things that Iowa for the last 2 decades does well. That is why they win football games. They don't throw for 350 and put up 50 points. They're good on third down. They're good in the penalties, good on special teams. USC won all those battles, and that made the huge difference in this game. USC deserves your respect. I've been on this train for the last month now. I truly believe in a power rating system. They're a top 10 to 15 team in the country. I probably have them closer to 10 than I do 15. And look, they might go into Eugene this weekend, come up short against the Ducks, and everyone will sit here saying, it's another year. Lincoln Riley couldn't get USC into the playoffs. Look at them. They lose to their best teams. Fine. If you don't want to know ball, have those arguments, say the same thing year over year. You say the take because it's easy. The continued growth that you are seeing from this team since the early parts of the 2024 season is so important for the future of this program. They're going to need to be taken extremely seriously in 2026 and beyond. This might be like that moment where you say, hey, this is the turning moment. This team learned that they can win mean man football games. It wasn't the prettiest. They didn't play 4 dominant quarters, but in the gut check moment, they responded, and it was an awesome outcome. I'm very happy for USC, and I hope that this is the start of something new. Hey, go beat Oregon. Then you'll get everybody's attention. You've got mine. You've had it for a while now, and I'm very impressed with the results we got out of Lincoln Riley's crew. Step away from the mic to cough. Yeah, I'm sick. Told you, we're battling through flu week here. All right, so what else happened this past weekend that deserves our attention? Texas A&M pulled the rabbit out of the hat, down 30-3 at the half, beat South Carolina 30-31. I gotta say, for as successful as this team is, as successful as they've been all year, there is something that terrifies the shit out of me about this team. You have to give them credit for finding the ways to win. The way they respond in certain moments here, like the comeback over South Carolina was effortless. It looked so easy. And when Arkansas, a few weeks before that, is exchanging blows, it's like, well, they have a response every time. They had a response every time for Notre Dame. Like, the way that they're able to win these outcomes and pull these games out, it's incredibly impressive. Something about the way Marcel Reed plays football terrifies me to all hell, man. And look, he's sitting here as one of the top 3-4 guys for the Heisman. I have a future on him. I picked Texas A&M to make the playoffs. Like, I'm very much in on everything we've seen from this team so far. But when you have results like that, games like that, deficits like that, when you have teams like Arkansas putting up 30+ on you, and then you mix that in with a schedule that basically features the entire bottom half of the SEC, it makes you wonder if this team is just going to trip up and finally, I guess play the full 4 quarters of oh shit football. They've done it for halves. They've done it for stretches where it's like, ooh, what are we doing? What are we doing? Can we figure it out? Yeah, okay, cool, we're fine. But what happens when you can't pull the rabbit out of the hat? It just worries me. This could be one of those situations like in Indiana, not to the same degree. Maybe I'll say Texas A&M is Indiana of last year on steroids, where they're definitely a much better team. But say they get to that point, SEC title game, or they go up against one of the top 6-7 teams in college football in the playoffs. Something just worries me. I don't know what it is. I don't mean to sound like a hater. I love the team. I picked them to do this well this season. Something scares me about the way they play football, man. Really fun game, though. I don't really have anything to say about South Carolina other than, like, holy shit. So what else? The ACC continues to disgust me. Something that's been the case for the last 6-7 weeks of the season. 6-7. Damn it. I made it so long without doing that. I think it's the first time. No, I've done that before. Not on this show. Whatever. The last 6 or 7 weeks, the ACC disgusted me. It did so again. Louisville dropped a game Friday night to Clemson. Georgia Tech barely beat Boston College due to some massive fourth quarter heroics. Pitt got demolished by Notre Dame because, of course, they would. Notre Dame's a really good football team. Pitt's a fun story. Miami is so obviously the best team in this conference. They manhandled NC State. But it's a shame they have such an outside chance to make the conference title game. But, of course, they have no one to blame but themselves. Carson Beck. Virginia beat up on Duke. Final score was a little misleading, which did end the ACC doomsday scenario. The ACC will get a conference champion in because Duke won't be a 4-loss conference champion. Hats off to the Cavs for preventing that from happening. But again, one bid league. And I wish you could use like a power rating system and just say, Miami, you're the team, because we just clearly know you're the best team. But it doesn't work like that. The Big 12's got some really good football teams. How about this? Texas Tech, Utah, BYU outscore their opponents 147-50. Really good football teams. Still have to hope that BYU or Utah end up winning the conference crown. In order for this conference to get 2 teams into the playoffs. I've been on this for a while now. That being said, both have gotten their asses handed to them by the Red Raiders already this season. So whoever makes it to the conference title game probably is just going to happen again. Maybe it doesn't. But I don't know how possible it is that you're getting 2 teams in. Because I do think Texas Tech is just... I mean, Texas Tech at one point was up 38-2. Just an unbelievable game against UCF. And then, I guess the last thing that we'll do to finish off this show, I'm going to take a live water break because I don't feel like doing another cut here. Live water break. You guys can watch me sip on some water. I'll step back in case it sounds weird. All right, let's finish this thing off. End of Monday shows. Between now and the end of the regular season, conference championship weekend, we are going to predict what the College Football Playoff Committee is going to release. We nailed it the first time around. I think we were off like a couple of flips. Second time around, we missed it because I was dead. I had the flu. I was sick. So let's get back to it. This is what I think the committee is going to do. I don't think there's going to be any changes in the top 3. I think Ohio State, Indiana, and A&M will be your 1, 2, 3. I think the Texas A&M results, the way that they keep having these half-assed games where it's like, oh, you look really bad for 30 minutes, is going to continue to keep them below Indiana. So Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, Texas A&M 3. Georgia's going to move up to 4. Obviously, Alabama's going to take a little bit of a dip here. Georgia with a massive win over Texas, so they'll be up to the 4th spot. Texas Tech will be up at 5. That's a really good football team, man. Don't let them being a Big 12 team misguide you. That team's going to make a run. The 6, 7, 8, 9, thank God I put 8 and 9 in there so I didn't have to do that again, is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. So Oregon got a really big win over Minnesota. Ole Miss barely took care of Florida. I think they're going to put Oregon up at 6. I think Oregon will be ranked as the 6th team in the country. They have a massive game over USC, which will be another team that's kind of like in the hunt here. Oregon at 6. I think Ole Miss will be at 7. Ole Miss is at 7. One spot ahead of Oklahoma at number 8. Oklahoma, big win over Alabama. They obviously have the head-to-head against Ole Miss, so I can't really bump them above there just yet. But Oklahoma takes a big jump into the playoffs here as the 8 seed. The 9 and 10 is going to be really interesting. I'm curious to see what they do here because it's going to be some semblance of Notre Dame and Alabama. Notre Dame is playing better football right now, more dominant efforts. Alabama the last few weeks, it's a come-from-behind win against South Carolina. It's a double-digit but ugly win over LSU, and obviously now a loss to Oklahoma. I think they're going to put Notre Dame at 9, rewarding them from the results that they have had, bumping them up a little bit. Alabama at 10, 11 in the seeding, in the bracket. Again, we're doing the bracket here because we're not going to go all the way down to 25 and say like, oh, well, Louisville is now falling out and Georgia Tech is now at 21. Like, we're not doing that. The 11th seed will be Miami because you need to have the top-rated ACC team in there. Now, Will they play for a conference title? No, but they'll be the highest rated ACC team. And then at 12, just for the love of God, can you give me JMU for 1 week so I can just stare at the playoff bracket and be like, hey, we did it. There we go. I'm worried, man. I got to be honest. We'll spend a couple of seconds here on JMU. That finishes out the bracket. So we're going to go Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, Miami, and James Madison. I think the first 4 out, I didn't do this, so let me just think of it off the top of my head. I think BYU is going to be in there. I think that Vanderbilt is going to be in there. I think that... Oh, man, is Georgia Tech going to be in there? I don't know. Maybe USC will be in there. Maybe they'll bump the Trojans up to being one of the first 4 out. Maybe I don't know. I didn't do the time to think about it. I don't have the list of teams here, so that'll be the 12. Final thing on JMU. I'm just worried, man. It sucks. You know, the American Conference seems like their conference champion is going to get in over the Dukes. The Dukes, man, I know that the conference doesn't help them out. There's no other competitive team in there. The American has had all these teams that are like, oh, Memphis is ranked. Oh, Tulane is ranked. Oh, North Texas. All these teams are kind of like vying for their moment. Navy at moments. I don't know. Can we just get JMU in there because I want them to be in? I'm worried about losing Bob Chesney this year. I think he's a really good head coach. I would wonder if James Franklin doesn't go to Virginia Tech, if that ends up being Chesney's job. I just want to make it 1 year when we have a head coach, because we've hit on a few now. We hit on Cignetti, we hit on Chesney. I just want to make the playoffs once. Give me a game, the 5-12 in my way. Give me a game at Lubbock or in Athens so I can go and say, I watched James Madison play a college football playoff game. These windows are tight. We've gotten very lucky. I don't know. So, for the sake of predicting and hoping, I'm going to put JMU in as my 12 seed. And we'll be back on Wednesday or Thursday to talk about it all. I haven't really figured. I think it's a 2-show week, so it might be Thursday. But we will be back then. We will be previewing Week 13. Not a whole lot of great games, but we'll talk about them. We'll put out the latest Spring Blake Sweet 16. We'll do best bets. We'll have an honest, open conversation about best bets and game predictions. We're gonna self-scout ourselves. We've been not too good, but we'll do all that. We'll keep marching on. Really exciting part of the college football season. I appreciate you guys being here with me every step of the way. Again, support the show where you can. Subscribe to the channels, 5-star reviews, like the videos, share with your friends, follow on the socials at Spring Blake CFB. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope that by Thursday I won't be talking this nasally and the flu week is gone. But we'll talk to you in a few days. I love you. I appreciate you. We'll talk to you in a few days. Is that the send-off I do? Yeah, cool. Peace.